Hare Krishna. So let's start our Mangalacharanam. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Krishna. So let's start. Tasmai Shri Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Done. So let's go to 929, memorization verse for this week. Welcome Divya and Alia. We are coming to you here today from Austin, Texas. Let's see. Okay. Samoham sarva bhuteshu name dveshyosti na priyaha ye bhajante tumam bhaktya mahi te teshu chapyaham. Studio. Samoham sarva bhuteshu name dveshyosti na priyaha ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya mahi te teshu chapyaham. I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. I am equal to all. But whoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I am also a friend to him. Jai, very sweet. Beautiful. So let's go back to where we left off. Coming to the end of this chapter 11, universal form, and we're on 1148. 1149? Okay, Pragati is saying 1149. Okay, let's do that. Mate vyatama chavimudha bhavo dristva rupam goramidrin mamedam Vyapeta vipritamana punastvam tadeva me rupamidam prapashya. Want to read Aruna?
You have been perturbed and bewildered by seeing this horrible feature of mine. Now, let it be finished, my devotee. Be free again from all disturbances. With a peaceful mind, you can now see the form you desire. Prabhupada. In the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna was worried about killing Bhishma and Drona, his worshipful grandfather and master. But Krishna said that he need not to be afraid of killing his grandfather. When the son of Dhritarashtra tried to disrobe Draupadi in the assembly of Kurus, Bhishma and Drona were silent. And for such negligence of duty, they should be killed. Krishna showed his universal form to Arjuna, just to show him that these people were already killed for their unlawful action. That scene was shown to Arjuna because devotees are always peaceful and they cannot perform such horrible actions. The purpose of revelation of the universal form was shown. Now Arjuna wanted to see the four-armed form, and Krishna showed him. A devotee is not much interested in the universal form, for it does not enable one to reciprocate loving feelings. Either a devotee wants to offer his respectful or worshipful feelings, or he wants to see the two-handed Krishna form so that he can reciprocate in loving service with the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Yeah. So he see Krishna here as being very compassionate to Arjuna. I mean, the whole reason he showed the universal form was out of compassion, right? One, because Arjuna wanted to see it. So he's like, okay, if you want to see it, here it is. And then two, because he wanted to reassure Arjuna that, you're going to win this battle. You don't have to be in anxiety. Everything is going to work out okay for you. So, of course, there were other reasons that he showed it, right, for common people, but those are the reasons that he showed it to Arjuna particularly. And so now that Arjuna has gotten that reassurance and gotten his curiosity fulfilled, got his request met, now Krishna's like, okay, you've been disturbed by this. I can see that this has been like a lot for you. Like your mind has been really disturbed by this horrible feature of mine. And even Krishna himself says this thing is just horrible, He uses that word ghoram, right? Ghoram. This is horrible. So he says, let it be finished. Enough of this. Be free from the disturbance. I want that your mind be peaceful. So the whole reason that he showed it was to make Arjuna's mind peaceful, right? Because he was worried about the war. Then as soon as he saw that Arjuna was like okay with the battle and other, desires that he had in seeing the form, I was like, okay, I'm trying to do this to like satisfy you, but I see that it's like kind of like making your mental health situation worse right now, your mental state worse. So I want you to be peaceful. So he withdrew the universal form. And Arjuna had already asked Krishna to see his four-armed form, right? He said, yeah, back in text 46, he says, he addresses the universal form. He says, O universal form, O thousand-armed Lord, I wish to see you in your four-armed form with helmeted head and club, wheel, conch, and lotus flowers. I long to see you in that form. So then, now that's what Krishna is going to show him. He's going to show him his four-armed form as Lord Vishnu. And then he's just going to show that for like a moment, and then he's going to go back to his two-armed form. Okay, so Sanjaya Uvacha Ityarjunam, Ityarjunam Vasudevas Tetokva Swakam Rupam Darshayam Asabhuyaha Asvashayam Asacha Bhiktamenam Bhutva Puna Somya Vapur Mahatma. Janaki.
Sanjaya said to Dhritarashtra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, having spoken thus to Arjuna, displayed his real four-armed form, and at last showed his two-armed form, thus encouraging the fearful Arjuna. Purport. When Krishna appeared as the son of Vasudeva and Devaki, he first of all appeared as four-armed Narayan. But when he was requested by his parents, he transformed himself into an ordinary child in appearance. Similarly, Krishna knew that Arjuna was not interested in seeing a four-handed form, but since Arjuna asked to see this four-handed form, Krishna also showed him this form again, and then showed himself in his two-handed form. The word Somya Vapu is very significant. Somya Vapu is a very beautiful form. It is known as the most beautiful form. When he was present, everyone was attracted simply by Krishna's form, and because Krishna is the director of the universe, he just banished the fear of Arjuna, his devotee, and showed him again his beautiful form of Krishna. In the Brahma Samhita 538, it is stated, Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilachanena. Only a person whose eyes are smeared with the ointment of love will see the beautiful form of Sri Krishna.
Yeah, so at the end of the last purport, Prabhupada was saying that a devotee is not much interested in seeing the universal form. Why?
Because they cannot do the loving service unto him.
Exactly, yeah. He says, for it does not enable one to reciprocate loving feelings. So that's the essence of the relationship between the devotee and Krishna is this exchange of loving feelings. And you just can't have exchange of loving feelings with the universal form. So Arjuna's like, this thing is just an obstacle to my relationship with Krishna. Let it be done. And Krishna was feeling the same way. This is not helping our loving relationship. It's just making Arjuna afraid of me. And let it be done. So that's what he says, and let it be finished. So now Krishna shows his four-armed form, and then at last his two-armed form. So which one is the Somya Vapu? The two-armed form is the Somya Vapu. So the most beautiful form is his two-armed form. And he says that when Krishna was present, everyone was attracted simply by Krishna's form. So anybody who saw Krishna, when Krishna came 5,000 years ago and performed his pastimes here on this planet, no one could just be neutral towards Krishna, right? Either you loved him or you hated him. There was no like gray area, there was no just like neutral. It was like the demons just hated him and wanted to kill him because they were so envious of him because he was so beautiful and so powerful. And then everybody who was, all the pious people, they were just totally attracted to him and attached to him. And, their hearts were being torn to pieces whenever he went away and things like that. So because he had such a beautiful form and not just attractive form or appearance, but like attractive qualities. His personality was Soumya also. Yeah. So yeah, but this form is very rare. The two-armed form is actually very rare to see because it can only be with love, because that form is the form in which devotees can reciprocate loving feelings. So if you don't have loving feelings for Krishna, then that form doesn't manifest, because what's the point, right? That form exists for exchange of loving feelings. So if you don't have loving feelings, then stay with the universal form, And when you get some love, then that form is going to manifest for you. That's kind of like that, like I was telling, recently I was talking about, I can't remember what I was saying, how I came to Krishna consciousness, right? Oh yeah, I think there's one girl, Celestine, that she called me up and she was interested in coming to Krishna house, and she was asking me like how I ended up in Krishna consciousness. Yeah. So I told her that, I grew up in Christianity, and so there's no like solid, clear sense of what God looks like, right? There's speculations about it, but there's nothing in the Bible that explains what God looks like. So, so I didn't know anything about this Somya Vapu, this beautiful form that the Lord has. And then because maybe, my devotion wasn't mature. Like I was just kind of like, I was praying, but I was kind of like asking for things, I wasn't like, dear God, I really want to love you, or I love you so much. When will I see you, or something? But then when my prayers sort of like matured and I started actually like, praying like that God, I want to know you. I want to get closer to you. Then very quickly I met devotees. Krishna just put devotees in my path, and I was able to be introduced to Krishna in his Somya Vapu. Okay. So as soon as there was some actual devotion there and some longing to have a close, intimate, loving relationship with God, then that's what I experienced, is that I was able to see this Somya Vapu. Of course, not that Krishna personally appeared before me, but I was, I became like, devotees showed me this is what Krishna looks like, right? Picture of Krishna, deity of Krishna, like that. Yeah, Arjuna?
Yeah, I was wondering on that particular topic. As you mentioned, that is a form that is difficult to see unless you have loving devotion for Krishna. So what about the Kauravas or any of, the other people in the army were able to see him, yet they were not particularly devotees of him? Of course, my immediate thought is that because they're associates of Krishna, but yeah, I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
so it was kind of like there's a verse in the Bhagavatam that says Pashyan api na pashyati, that they see while seeing they don't see. So it means that word is used not in relation to Krishna, but in relation to like people in the material world, they see everyone dying, they see that everything is leading towards inevitable destruction, but they don't see, they see it, but they're in denial that they're ever going to die, that their loved ones are going to die, that everything's going to be finished. They don't act accordingly. But it's similar that people like, all these demoniac people that happen to be walking the streets and interacting with Krishna when he was physically present, they obviously saw him, but they didn't see him as God. They didn't understand that he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that he's the ultimate object of love and worship. And so in that sense, they didn't really see him. They didn't really see him for who he really is. They totally misunderstood him.
Makes
Yeah.
perfect sense.
And there's that nice description of how there's a famous verse from Srimad Bhagavatam where the Krishna enters the wrestling arena in Mathura, right? Comes this wrestling arena to wrestle with Chanura and Mushtika. And so it was a stadium. It was like a sports stadium with bleachers all around, right? So there were crowds of people there to watch this big wrestling match that Kamsa had organized a huge festival. It was like a big, big event. So there were thousands of people there, and it's described that everybody saw him differently. Like the yogis saw him as the Paramatma, and the Brahmavaris saw him as the impersonal Brahman, and the women saw him as the most gorgeous, attractive male, and the foolish people just saw him as an ordinary man. And then Kamsa saw him as death personified, right? The Rishnis, like the Nanda Maharaj and the other cowherd men, saw him as their darling son, like that. So they all saw him in different ways. The wrestlers saw him as a thunderbolt. So they all had different visions of Krishna, different understandings of who he is and what he represents. And so some were really seeing him and some were not seeing him. Yeah, there was Gyanis saw him as the absolute truth, the supreme absolute truth. So some saw him, understood him partially, some fully, and some not at all, right? They just totally didn't see who he was at all. So depending on our consciousness, and yeah, like I was saying, depending on the degree of our love, we'll see him more clearly. That's the ointment which gives us vision. So like some people, they're just totally blind. They don't see anything. They just don't see Krishna, even though he's standing in front of them. And other people, they have a little bit of ointment on the eyes. So they see something, but it's blurry, right? They still have the eye disease, just overcoming their blindness. So everything is kind of blurry. They're like, wow, I see something really bright there. I see somebody that looks effulgent and special, but I can't really make out who it is. And then people who have full ointment, they've been using that ointment for some time, and then their eye disease is cured. They have 20/20 vision. They're like, wow, that's Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the object of love, the object of worship, the person that I'm going to totally take shelter of and surrender to. So that's the real vision. Yes.
That's a silly question. What if, like, right now we want to see Krishna's two-handed forms and like how Krishna is, and that form is only in Radha and Krishna Gaula Vrindavan.
Yeah.
What if we do not reach and we went to some Vaikunt planets and we see Vishnu with 4 hands? We didn't, and we don't like that.
And you're like, no,
Yeah.
get away from me. on the 2-arm form.
Again, do we have to come to this material world or?
No. Well, so for starters, if your mood is that you want to worship Krishna in his 2-armed form in Vraj, in Vrindavan,
Yeah.
then you're not going to end up in Vaikuntha, right? Because it's just like Krishna's not going to send you to a place in the spiritual world where you're not happy, and it's a totally different mood. So the mood in Vaikuntha is awe and reverence. So people who have that awe and reverence, and that I'm your humble servant and you're the great Lord, then they'll go to Vaikuntha. But people who want to be part of Radha Krishna's Leela, to play with Krishna, dance with Krishna, have a very sweet, intimate relationship with Krishna, in which his being God is not really very prominent. It's just you just love him because he's wonderful. Then you'll go to Vraj. And then, but then that said, there's a pastime from Brihat Bhagavatamrita. It's not a real story, but it's a fictitious story where this character who's created by Sanatana Goswami, who's the author of Brihad Bhagavatamrita. His name's Gopakumar, and he basically is on a journey. He's on his spiritual journey. He's chanting his mantra names of Krishna that he received from his guru, and he gradually gets promoted to different planets. He goes to heavenly planets. He comes back down, and he goes to Vaikuntha even, and he's so happy because he starts to see the Lord, and he sees Lord Vishnu, but because his mood towards the Lord is very like intimate and loving, when he sees Lord Vishnu, he goes running towards him, like with his arms out to like embrace him. And then the residents of Vaikuntha, they're like stopping him, like, what? Stop, where are you going? He's like, I'm going to hug my beloved Lord. And he's like, no, Lord Vishnu, we don't do that to Lord Vishnu. That's like, you're in the wrong place. And he's like, and anyway, so what do you dress like that with this like cloth on your head and just a simple dhoti? Like, where's your like silks and jewelry and helmet and all these things? He's like, I don't wear that. He's like, you're in the wrong place, boy. And then he said, you should be in Goloka. So then from Vaikuntha, he gets promoted to Goloka. And there's also a section in Nectar Devotion where Prabhupada talks about that of course it's rare, but if somehow or other a soul ends up in Vaikuntha and then realizes that they want to have a more intimate relationship with Krishna, like in Vrindavan, then from Vaikuntha you can go to Vrindavan. But generally speaking, for practitioners of bhakti, especially in ISKCON, because we're very much like guided towards Vrindavan, the Vrindavan mood, that's what Prabhupada gave us. That's what Lord Chaitanya gave us. Lord Chaitanya emphasized that. So anyone who's a Gaudiya Vaishnava, a Vaishnava in the line of Lord Chaitanya, basically like gets put on the fast track to Vrindavan. So that's where, that will be the ultimate destination for most of us. Unless, we have a different mood, unless we're like, no, I don't want to go to Vrindavan. I don't want to go to Vaikuntha. Yeah. Okay. Is that all right? So let's go on. Wait, where did we leave off? Okay, 51. Now Arjuna is going to speak. Arjuna Uvacha Drisvedam Manusham Rupam Tava Somyam Janardana Idanim Asmi Samritta Sacheta Prakritim Gata.
When Arjuna thus saw Krishna in his original form, he said, O Janardhan, seeing this human-like form so very beautiful, I am now composed in mind, and I am restored to my original nature. Here the words Manusam Rupam clearly indicate the Supreme Personality of Godhead to be originally two-handed. Those who deride Krishna as if he were an ordinary person are shown here to be ignorant of his divine nature. If Krishna is like an ordinary human being, then how is it possible for him to show the universal form and again to show the four-handed Narayan form? So it is very clearly stated in Bhagavad Gita that one who thinks that Krishna is an ordinary person and who misguides the reader by claiming that it is the impersonal Brahman within Krishna speaking is doing the greatest injustice. Krishna has actually shown his universal form and his four-handed Vishnu form. So how can he be an ordinary human being? A pure devotee is not confused by misguiding commentaries on Bhagavad Gita because he knows what is what. The original verses of Bhagavad Gita are as clear as the sun. They do not require lamplight from foolish commentators.
Yeah, Srila Prabhupada would become very unhappy. People would misinterpret Krishna's statements in the Bhagavad Gita to mean something other than what Krishna actually intended them to mean. So, yeah, when Arjuna here says Manusham Rupam, it means in a human form. So, Prabhupada is emphasizing that, yeah, Krishna appears in a human form, but it doesn't mean that he's an ordinary human being. And that should be obvious because he just demonstrated that, right? He just demonstrated the universal form. He demonstrated his four-armed Vishnu form. So Krishna, if he was an ordinary person, he could not do these things. So anybody that thinks that Krishna's form, when he comes to this material world, is that he comes as an ordinary person in an ordinary material body, and that it's the soul within Krishna that's to be worshipped, and that his body is just going to die like everybody else's, then that person is just offensive, and anyone who tries to translate Bhagavad Gita to mean anything close to that is very wrong. So, yeah. Now, this was the same thing that when Lord Chaitanya was traveling, he met Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was a Brahmin and a scholar, and he was an impersonalist. So he was having conversation with Lord Chaitanya, and yeah, he was older than Lord Chaitanya, and so he kind of like had a little bit of a patronizing attitude at first towards Lord Chaitanya. He said, "Oh, my dear boy, you're so young. You took sannyas. Probably you haven't even completed your education, and you seem to be just doing a lot of singing and dancing. Let me give you an education. Basically, let me teach you about Vedanta." And so Lord Chaitanya, out of respect, he's like, "Okay, I'll come." So then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was just speaking, and Lord Chaitanya was just listening, and all day long. And that happened for 7 days. And he was just explaining Vedanta according to his own understanding. And Lord Chaitanya just sitting there listening very attentively, very respectfully. And then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, I've been instructing you for 7 days and you haven't asked any questions. You haven't made any comments. Either have you understood everything or have you understood nothing, or what have you understood? Like, where are you at with what I'm saying? And then Lord Chaitanya said, well, in my mind, the conclusion of the Vedas, the Vedanta is very clear. To me, it's just as clear as the sun in the sky. But somehow or other, you've managed to cloud it over with your interpretations. And I don't understand what you're saying. It's just like you made it all just really cloudy and obscure. And so then Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he said, "Oh, so then, what is your understanding?" He wasn't he was an actual Brahmin, so he was like open-minded, he was broad-minded. So he's like, "Well, let me hear your perspective then, interested." So then Lord Chaitanya now was explaining Vedanta, and according to in a Vaishnava conclusion that Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, and Bhagavan is a person with a personal form and beautiful Somya Vapu, and it's Krishna, and he's the object of love. And then and his preaching was so beautiful and so logical and shastric and convincing. Of course, Lord Chaitanya's Krishna, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, so he's going to be the best preacher. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was convinced, and he became a Vaishnava. Yeah. So how did I get to that? Oh, yeah. So people tend to misinterpret the scriptures, and the conclusions of scriptures like Bhagavad Gita are as clear as the sun, right? The meanings are very clear, and so they might need a little bit of elaboration or explanation, but they don't need interpretation, so they don't need to be twisted, or that some obscure meaning is Prabhupada would say is screwed out of them, you really have to rack your brain to make it say something that it doesn't actually say, as if it's some kind of riddle that you have to solve or something, which is what these Mayavadi commentators are like. Yeah, Krishna says that, but what he really meant to say is something else. That's very reading. Can you just text her and tell her I'm in class? So, yeah, so Prabhupada would get really upset when people did this, because the scriptures are, Krishna's saying what he's saying, and our purpose as teachers or writers or, even readers is not to try to, screw something different out of it. Our purpose is to just really just understand, what is Krishna saying? How does this fit together? How does this apply to my life? How can I mold my life in such a way that it's guided by these words of the Lord? Okay.
I was thinking I was when I didn't read this Bhagavad Gita as it is by Prabhupada, we had some different Bhagavad Gitas and Ramayana, and my grandmother, grandfather, they used to go with the shlokas. So I find it all those commentaries were like the scope of their interpretation is like what is the scope of their knowledge. Like they do not have the accessibility to that pure love. They just make so all the interpretation in different Bhagavad Gitas is according to their scope, not what Krishna wanted to explain, and they just make it cloudy. And the story about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I saw it in a movie, in a Hindi movie.
Yeah.
So here Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya and all his devotees to like followers and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He said it, you are like in a very strong voice, and then after all those heated conversations, Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya was, yeah, hands down, like I surrender to you. You have the perfect knowledge, and I was in the clouded environment.
Yeah.
So that philosophical conversation is very in a very good way they have demonstrated that.
Good. That's nice. Yeah, yeah, because Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he was like very prominent. He was like in Jagannath Puri at the time. He was like one of the head of the Brahmin community practically. So yeah, and it's nice that he was a real Brahmin. He was like really open-minded, right? That when you hear something, you don't just like stand by your point of view stubbornly just because it's your point of view and you want to be right. You can't bear to be defeated. But it's like you really want to understand what the truth is. And so when somebody speaks something that makes a lot more sense than what you were adhering to, then you're just like, oh yeah, I accept that. Okay. All right. Now Krishna is going to respond. Yeah, so before that, yeah, so Arjuna is becoming peaceful. Now he's composed in mind, restored to his original nature. So yeah, remember, Arjuna's original nature is friendship, right? Sakya-ras. So now he's no longer in the adbhuta ras of astonishment. Oh my God, this is so amazing. He's no longer in the bhayanaka ras of being afraid and trembling and all that. Now he's back to his original nature. So now Krishna is going to respond. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Sudur Darsham Idam Rupam Dristavam Asiyan Mama Deva Apyasya Rupasya Nityam Darshana Kamshinaha. Arjuna, would you like to read?
I'll read the next one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead then, Aruna.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "My dear Arjuna, this form of mine you are now seeing is very difficult to behold. Even the demigods are ever seeking the opportunity to see this form, which is so dear." Prabhupada, in the 40th verse of this chapter, Lord Krishna concluded revealing his universal form and informed Arjuna that this form is not possible to be seen by so many pious activities, sacrifices, etc. Now hear the word Sudarsan is used, indicating that Krishna's two-handed form is still more confidential. One may be able to see the universal form of Krishna by adding a little tinge of devotional service to various activities like penances, Vedic study, and philosophical speculation. It may be possible, but without a tinge of bhakti, one cannot see. That has already been explained. Still, beyond that universal form, the form of Krishna with two hands is still more difficult to see, even for demigods like Brahma and Lord Shiva. They desire to see him, and we have the evidence in Srimad Bhagavatam that when he was supposed to be in the womb of his mother Devaki, all the demigods from heaven came to see the marvel of Krishna, and they offered nice prayers to the Lord, although he was not at that time visible to them. They waited to see him. A foolish person may deride him, thinking him an ordinary person, and may offer respect not to him, but to the impersonal something within him. But these are all nonsensical postures. Krishna in his two-armed form is actually desired to be seen by demigods like Brahma and Shiva. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 11, it is confirmed that Avajanti Mam Muda Manusintanu Ashritam. He is not visible to the foolish person who deride him. Krishna's body, as confirmed by Brahma Samhita and confirmed by Krishna himself in Bhagavad Gita, is completely spiritual and full of bliss and eternality. His body is never like a material body, but for some who makes the study of Krishna by reading Bhagavad Gita or similar Vedic scripture, Krishna is a problem. For one using a material process, Krishna is considered to be a great historical personality and a very learned philosopher, but he is an ordinary man, and even though he was so powerful, he had to accept a material body. Ultimately, they think that the absolute truth is impersonal. Therefore, they think that his impersonal feature, he assumed a personal feature attached to a material nature. This is a materialistic calculation of the Supreme Lord. Another calculation is speculative. Those who are in search of knowledge also speculate on Krishna and consider him to be less important than the universal form of the Supreme. Thus, something that the universal form of Krishna, which has manifested to Arjuna, is more important than his impersonal form. According to them, the personal form of the Supreme is something imaginary. They believe that in the ultimate issue, the absolute truth is not a person, but the transcendental process is described in Bhagavad Gita chapter 4. To hear about Krishna from authorities, that is the actual Vedic process, and those who are actually in the Vedic line hear about Krishna from authority, and by repeated hearing about him, Krishna becomes dear. As we have several times discussed, Krishna is covered by his Yog Maya potency. He is not to be seen or revealed to anyone and everyone. Only by one to whom he reveals himself can he be seen. This is confirmed in the Vedic literature. For one who is a surrendered soul, the absolute truth can actually be understood. The transcendentalist, by continuous Krishna consciousness and by devotional service to Krishna, can have his spiritual eyes opened and see Krishna by revelation. Such a revelation is not possible even for the demigods. Therefore, it is difficult even for the demigods to understand Krishna, and the advanced demigods are always in hope of seeing Krishna in his two-handed form. The conclusion is that although to see the universal form of Krishna is very, very difficult and not possible for anyone and everyone, it is still more difficult to understand his personal form as Syamasundara.
Chai. Yeah. So, yeah, he's saying that this two-armed form, first of all, he said before that the universal form is very difficult to see. And now he's saying that the two-armed form is actually the most difficult to see. Because, right, we're talking about you need to actually have love to appreciate the two-armed form. And so the demigods, yeah, he says that this is Sudur Darshan. This darshan is, so darshan means seeing, is difficult. Dur. It says it's a very difficult darshan to have. And Su means very. It's a very difficult darshan to have and to see Krishna in his two-armed form. And he said even the demigods are unable to see this form. So why do you think the demigods have a hard time seeing Krishna's two-armed form? Divya.
Is it because maybe they don't necessarily have pure love for him completely? Is that wrong?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, they're pious, but they also,
Mhm.
you know, they it's like Prabhupada's saying they try to see Krishna, they want to see, he said, Prabhupada's literally saying the advanced demigods are always in hope of seeing Krishna in his two-armed form, but they're not necessarily able to see it because they're demigods. And the reason that they're demigods is because they still have a lot of material desires, right? They want material position, they want power, they want material opulence and material pleasures and comforts that are available there in the heavenly planets. And that's why they didn't go back to Godhead, is because they have these material attachments, despite their piety and all their, good things that they've done, and even, their prayers and their worship and their service. But because they have these stubborn attachments to material things, then that kind of blocks them from being able to really to see Krishna, to interact with Krishna directly.
And demigods are also covered by the Yog Maya potency.
But they're just covered by Mahamaya.
Like Indra and Brahma, they misunderstood Krishna. They thought it's
Yeah.
normal.
Yes.
Yeah, it was the same example of seeing but not seeing, right? Like Indra thought he was gonna, kill Krishna and all the Brajavasis and all Krishna's cows, and that was actually gonna happen. Like he was in that much illusion. And Brahma just like played a trick on Krishna to try to like test him. And it's like, what are you doing, Brahma? Right?
So,
This is God.
so can you say that like Kamsa, he knew that this boy is Krishna and gonna kill him, and Brahma and Indra, they knew that they knew it as Krishna, but they see him as a normal child.
Yeah, I mean, well, Kamsa did too, because well, he kind of like didn't believe in God. He thought that he was the all-powerful, but he just, because he heard the voice that this person is coming to kill you. So he didn't think that this is the supreme personality of God. And otherwise, he wouldn't have thought that he could kill him, right? He learned that later, that he was unkillable. Divya?
I just wanted to say it's so hard to sometimes it's so hard to understand that the demigods they're still here because they do have these material desires that are keeping them locked down to this world because I know Lord Shiva he wrote Sri Sri Radha Kripa Kataksh and the whole like song, he's like glorifying Srimati Radharani and how like the perfection of his life would be just for her to look at him. And he's singing this to
Yeah.
Parvati Devi. Like he just keeps and he's glorifying her. He's calling her by all her different names. And
Yeah.
it's just so hard to understand that someone so advanced is still here because they have these attachments.
Yeah. Well, Lord Shiva's position is somewhat different because he's in a different tattva. You know, he's not a Jiva tattva who's stuck here in the material world, but he's Shiva tattva. It's a little bit different. So, yeah, Shiva's actually like an eternal position. He's not like a Jiva that fell down to the material world.
Oh,
So,
okay, thank
yeah.
you for clarifying that.
But Brahma's case, we can't say that. Brahma is like a jiva that's taking the post of Brahma. But then sometimes Brahma is a pure devotee and goes back to Godhead, and sometimes Brahma gets bewildered.
He wants when Krishna born, he comes with different forms. He wants to see Krishna, and he begs Yashoda Maiya to please
Hmm.
see, and then he went to Ras Leela being a gopi.
Yeah, he
being a
got changed
gopi.
into a gopi. Yeah, so yeah, that Vaishnavanam Yata Shambhu, that Lord Shiva is a Vaishnava. And yeah, so his position is a little different. He's usually we kind of lump him in with the
Love.
demigods, but he's different from the other demigods.
He's also in a loving relationship.
Yeah. He's like categorically different from the demigods. He's in a different tattva. Yes, Divya?
Just to add what you were saying, it reminds me one time I've heard this by different I've heard different people say this, but it's like Lord Shiva's he is non-different than Lord Vishnu, but it's almost like he's like Vishnu in touch with the material energy, right? Like kind of like milk is like pure in its
Yeah.
pure state, and then it turns to yogurt when you add like some like lemon to it,
Yeah.
kind of like
Yeah,
that.
Prabhupada uses that example.
Yeah.
So like yogurt is nothing but milk, but at the same time it's not exactly milk. So Lord Shiva is like, yeah, he's like Lord Vishnu, but not exactly Lord Vishnu like that. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, so this verse that Prabhupada is mentioning, 9:11, Avajananti mam mudha, munushim tanum ashritam. I always remember the number for this because it's 9/11, like September 11th, the day that there was a great tragedy. So this verse is talking about a great tragedy that happens to conditioned souls. It says, fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the supreme Lord of all that be. So yeah, Krishna becomes his own ordinary human being, and foolish people, they tragically think that he's an ordinary person. They're unable to recognize him as God. So Prabhupada's talking about, yeah, these commentators that comment on him like that. And that they think that, so these Mayavadis or even, any kind of impersonalists, they think that Krishna's coming as a human being is kind of like a temporary manifestation, but the supreme absolute truth is impersonal. And Krishna addresses this philosophy directly when in which one is it? Did I just lose my place? No, it's here in verse 724. He says, unintelligent men who do not know me perfectly think that I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, was impersonal before and have now assumed this personality. Due to their small knowledge, they do not know my higher nature, which is imperishable and supreme. So they think that Krishna was impersonal before, his original form is impersonal, and that just temporarily he came and he decided to have some human-like pastimes for his amusement in the material world, but that when he winds up his pastimes, then he goes back to his original impersonal form. That's what they think. And therefore they think that the impersonal form is the supreme eternal form, and Krishna's personal form is just some little, temporary manifestation that doesn't really mean anything in the ultimate issue. But Krishna says that people who think this way are unintelligent. He uses the word abudaya. They have no intelligence and they don't know me. He says they don't know me perfectly. They know something about me, but they don't know me properly. All they know is my Brahman feature. And then he particularly, so then how is it that they don't know him? Then he says, to such foolish people. And the next verse, is it next verse? 725, he says, I am never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them I am covered by my internal potency, and therefore they do not know that I am unborn and inexhaustible. So as long as people have this little, even a slight degree of, envy towards Krishna, then, or even material attachments, then he hides himself. He doesn't fully manifest himself to such foolish and unintelligent people. So they're not able to know him. Okay. All right, let's go. So now he's going to say, now he's going to start talking about how we actually can know him. 1153. Naham vedarna tapasa na danena na chejaya shakya evam vido drashtum dristavan asimam yata. Arjuna, you ready?
Yes. Sorry.
Okay, go
Takes
for
me a
it.
second to turn the mute off.
That's okay.
Oh, where did it go?
53.
Yeah. Sorry, my internet is just acting funny.
Mm.
Oh, perhaps I'll do the next one. Oh, never mind.
Okay.
It's here.
Got it?
Lord gracious. Okay. Okay. The form you're seeing with your transcendental eyes cannot be understood simply by studying the Vedas, nor by undergoing serious penances, nor by charity, nor by worship. It is not by this means that we can see me as I am. Krishna first appeared before his parents Devaki and Vasudev in a four-handed form, and then he transformed himself into the two-handed form. This mystery is very difficult to understand for those who are atheists or who are devoid of devotional service. For scholars who have simply studied Vedic or mere academic qualifications, Krishna is not possible to understand. Nor is he to be understood by persons who officially go to the temple to offer worship. They make their visit, but they cannot understand Krishna as he is. Krishna can be understood only through the path of devotional service, as explained by Krishna himself in the next verse.
Right. Spoiler alert. Prabhupada told us already before we got there. So yeah, he said this form, two-armed form of Krishna is sudur darshanam, right? It's very difficult. It can't be understood by studying the Vedas, nor by doing penances, by giving charity, or even by going to the temple and worshiping him. And there has to be a quality. It can't just be like official worship, like, okay, I'm the priest, I'm going to go there and do my little service, and go away. There has to be devotion. And so that's the main thing. So let's just jump right into 1154 then. Bhaktya, sorry. Bhaktya tvananyaya shaktya aham evam vidorjuna gyatum drastum cha tatvena praveshtum cha parantapa. Janaki?
My dear Arjuna, Only by undivided devotional service can I be understood as I am, standing before you, and can thus be seen directly. Only in this way can you enter into the mysteries of my understanding. For Krishna can be understood only by the process of undivided devotional service. He explicitly explains this in the verse so that unauthorized commentators who try to understand the Bhagavad Gita by the speculative process will know that they're simply wasting their time. No one can understand Krishna or how he came from parents in a four-handed form at once changed himself into a two-handed form. These things are very difficult to understand by study of the Vedas or by philosophical speculation. Therefore, it is clearly stated here that no one can see him or enter into understanding of these matters. Those who, however, are very experienced students of Vedic literature can learn about him from the Vedic literature in so many ways. There are so many rules and regulations, and if one at all wants to understand Krishna, he must follow the regulative principles described in the authoritative literatures. One can perform penance in accordance with those principles. For example, to undergo serious penance, one may observe fasting on Janmashtami, the day on which Krishna appeared. And on the 2 days of Ekadasi, the 11th day after the new moon and the 11th day after the full moon, as far as charity is concerned, it is plain that charity should be given to the devotees of Krishna who are engaged in his devotional service to spread the Krishna philosophy or Krishna consciousness throughout the world. Krishna consciousness is a benediction to humanity. Lord Chaitanya was appreciated by Rupa Goswami as the most munificent man of charity because love of Krishna, which is very difficult to achieve, was distributed freely by him. So if one gives some amount of his money to persons involved in distributing Krishna consciousness, that charity, given to spread Krishna consciousness, is the greatest charity in the world. And if one worships as prescribed in the temples in India, there's always some statue, usually of Vishnu or Krishna, that is a chance to progress by offering worship and respect to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For the beginner in devotional service to the Lord, temple worship is essential, and this is confirmed in the Vedic literatures, Svetasvadara, Upanishad 623. Yasya deve parabhaktir, yata deve tata guru, tasyaite katita hyarta prakashante mahatmana. One who has unflinching devotion for the Supreme Lord and is directed by the spiritual master, in whom he has a similar unflinching faith, can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead by revelation. One cannot understand Krishna by mental speculation. For one who does not take personal training under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, it is impossible to even begin to understand Krishna. The word "tu" is specifically used here to indicate that no other process can be recommended, or can be successful in understanding Krishna.
Yeah, just pause there for a sec. So I found it interesting that in this purport, Prabhupada was mentioning pretty much all the processes from the previous verse that Krishna said that by these processes you can't see me as I am. And Prabhupada is saying that if you do those processes with bhakti, then they take on a new life. They become effective. So it's the bhakti that makes them effective. But if we do any of these processes, like, because these are all like good, pious things to do, right? We should study the Vedas, we should give charity, we should worship the Lord in the temple. But if we do it without devotion, without love, without some feeling for Krishna, with a goal to attain shelter and a relationship with Krishna, then they don't work. But so the missing ingredient here is bhakti. So that's why Krishna is saying that bhaktya tvananyaya shaktya, that when you do bhakti, then all things become possible. So he uses that word shakya, which means like, possible, that it can happen, right? So then Prabhupada explains that as far as studying the Vedas is concerned, he's saying that, we should study the Vedas and learn the rules and regulations of the Vedas and follow those, follow the regulative principles described in the authoritative literatures regarding devotional service, basically, right? Shruti, Smriti, Puranadi, like we should perform our devotional service according to Shastra, according to the injunctions of Shastra, and then it becomes nice. So we should study the Vedas for that purpose. Study the conclusion of the Vedas, which is Srimad Bhagavatam, or Bhagavad Gita, the direct words of the Lord in the Vedic tradition. And then as far as penance, what does he say? There are austerities. He says you can fasting on Jamashtami, Ekadasi, right? Because those are days where we fast so that we can increase our devotional service to Krishna. We do some austerity for the pleasure of Krishna. Like, Krishna, I'm going to do this little fast for you, for your pleasure, because I just want to, you know, not be self-indulgent today, but focus my attention on you. Or Ekadasi, because that pleases Krishna. It's Krishna's day. So I want to do something special on that day for him. And then what's the next thing? Charity. What does he say about charity? Yeah, I give to the devotees who are engaged in preaching specifically. And he gave the example of Lord Chaitanya was appreciated by Rupa Goswami as the most munificent man of charity because he was distributing
Krishna.
love of Krishna. Yeah, the holy name of Krishna, love of Krishna. So as far as giving money or things in charity, give them to a devotee of Krishna. But the best thing to give is love for Krishna. So if you can give love for Krishna, if you can give knowledge of Krishna, like books about Krishna or Krishna Prasad, or things that are connected to Krishna, which engender love for Krishna in the hearts of people, then give that, following the footsteps. That's the greatest charity in the world, Prabhupada says. So, yeah. And then as far as worshiping in the temple, Prabhupada says that if you're going to worship in a temple, just make sure that it's a Vishnu or Krishna temple. You know, don't invest your time and energy in worshiping demigods and, you know, whatever. Just go straight for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because worshiping Krishna is like watering the root of the tree. That when you pour water on the root, then all the leaves and branches are nourished. Or like feeding the stomach. When you put food in your mouth and it goes to your stomach, it nourishes your whole body. You don't need to like feed all your fingers separately and all your toes separately. And, you know, you don't need to water all the leaves and branches of the tree. So in the same way, we don't need to worship the demigods, because when we worship Krishna, then all the demigods are automatically satisfied, even more so than if we try to worship them separately. So yeah, all these things are good if they're done with devotion, if they're done in Krishna consciousness. And without Krishna consciousness, then they don't have the desired, they don't yield the desired result. So that's something important to remember. We're getting to time. So let's just stop here for today with our reading, and then we can just open it up for any reflections or questions or comments or anything. Haribol. What are your thoughts, Janaki? Bhagavad Gita is so nice.
It's so sweet. Just reading about Krishna, it just pleases our heart.
Yeah. It's funny how my background, the window, like sometimes it's
Yeah.
light and sometimes it's the clouds are showing. It's like flashing. I don't know why it's doing that.
I was noticing this.
Really? It's been doing it the whole time.
The
It's
wind of
kind of
love.
mystical.
I think that the most important thing to me is you cannot understand by any Vedas or anything. It is just the love by which you can get Krishna. And 200 form is what we want, and which is so much. No one has ever seen it. It's so difficult. Even you can see the universal form, but you cannot see Krishna as himself. You can go to Vaikuntha Lok, but to go to his intimate leelas rather than Krishna to serve them, you need to love.
Yeah.
Also the ointment of love.
Ointment of
Ointment
love.
of love.
Nice.
Yeah. It goes from blindness to blurriness to actually like seeing Krishna full, like who he really is. Well, in his Somya Vapu, his beautiful, transcendental, eternal form.
It is so true. I've brought so many, like my friends, my roommates, my coworkers to see Kalatanji. And they would just, oh, it's beautiful. And like, I would just ask, like, so that's so special, such a beautiful place. And no, just normal temple, normal brothers. Like, what? And I would have tears in my eyes. Oh, they're so beautiful. I cannot do it. And they'd be like, yeah, just normal. They were like, how can I not see it?
Yeah.
How can
How
I
did
not see
they get this? Like, I think I have been asking this a lot. How can we get this pure love? Because even right now, we don't feel like we don't love right now like Krishna to the fullest, like how
No.
gopis love, or how can we reach to that state?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we need to purify our hearts because our hearts are going in a million directions, right? We're loving so many other things.
Yeah.
So that's what Krishna uses this word here in the verse. He says, Bhaktya tu ananyaya shakya. Is ananya means without anything else, right? Bhakti for Krishna without anything else.
Also, Prabhupada Priya says that devotion is the key.
Okay.
And she also says,
Bhakti.
when one's love and devotion for Krishna is pure, that is not mixed with any kind of selfish desire, then one is qualified to go Krishna. And it says devotion is the key.
Devotion is the key.
Devotion.
Open up the door to Goloka. Yeah.
What's
So-
the thing?
This is the verse.
The end.
Which one? Bhakti Ananya? Yeah, it's 1154. It's the first line of the Sanskrit. Bhaktya means by devotional service to, but Ananyaya means without being mixed with fruitive activities or speculative knowledge. And then he says, by that, then Shakyam Eva Vidorjuna, that I'm able to be known. I'm able to be seen as I am, in fact, in Tattva, Tattvena. Yeah. So something that, yeah, there's another verse that says that if we go back to chapter 2, text 40, I believe it is, where he says, not 40, 41. Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekeha kurunandana bahushaka hyanantascha buddhayo vyavasayanam. He says that those who are resolute on this path, their aim is one, but others, the intelligence of those who are irresolute is many-branched. So the current situation is that our intelligence, our mind, our emotions is going in all different directions. We're thinking, of, my mother and my brother and my child and my car and my job and my house and my sports and my dinner and my whatever, my future husband or whatever, our intelligence, our thoughts, our feelings are going in all different directions, right? My visa. Going in all different directions of the things that we want or we need and our hearts are set on, and we have all of our other desires, and Krishna is one of those many desires, right? We also want to have a relation, we want to love Krishna, we want to go back to Godhead, but we want so many other things at the same time. So our intelligence is many branched. So he said that we need to become, our aim needs to be one. Ekeha Kurunandana, right? We need to be fixed that Krishna and only Krishna, and I have full faith that by attaining Krishna, I attain all things desirable. There's nothing else to be attained. There's nothing missing. And if I just go for reestablishing my loving relationship with Krishna, then all desires are fulfilled, all questions are answered, all mysteries are solved, all goals are achieved, because Krishna is everything. Yeah, but that requires a lot of faith and focus. So we're working on it. Gradually getting purified of these attachments to other things. And that's it's a side effect of devotional service, right? There's a nice verse that says, Sarvopadi vinirmuktam tat paratvena nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhaktir uchite. It's actually Rupa Goswami's definition of bhakti. He says, bhakti, or devotional service, means engaging all the senses in the service of the Lord, Supreme Personality of Godhead, who's the master of the senses. And then he says, when the spirit soul renders service to the Supreme, there are two side effects. One is that you become completely free from material designations. And two is that simply by employing the senses in the service of the Lord, the senses become purified. So senses also means the mind. And so just by serving the Lord, engaging our senses in the service of the master of the senses, then our senses become purified, our minds become purified. And that means the senses don't want sense gratification anymore. The mind is not interested in material benefits anymore. Because it's purified. It's like our body, mind, senses, intelligence, everything is just aligned with the actual, real, immortal desire of the soul, which is just to love and serve Krishna. And then everything just lines up and falls into place. And then we can see something that we used to really be attached to and be like, not interested. And senses are not excited about it. Mind doesn't care, Like, I mean, we can experience that. Like, say if somebody was like used to eat meat before, and maybe their favorite food was, some kind of like meat
Sushi.
dish, right? Sushi or whatever. And so you would like be walking down the street in New York or something, and you'd pass by some sushi bar and they had all these entrees in the window, and you could see them the chefs doing the thing in there, and you'd be like, oh my God, I really want to have that, right? I bet that looks really good. I want to taste this. And they do it really well or something. And now after practicing Krishna consciousness for just a very short time, even like a matter of months, you see that sushi and you're like, ew, how could I have possibly eaten that before?
I like fish.
Right? And you didn't even like try.
Fish.
You never had to even like think about becoming detached from sushi. It just happened, right? Like you just like woke up one day and just like it became unthinkable, to even eat that thing. So in the same way, I mean, that's like those kinds of external desires are easy to get rid of, but then the deeper things are the things that are more deep rooted. But we just, in the same way that that desire to eat sushi automatically went away, our desires for other material things will gradually go away. And the more subtle, deep rooted ones will also go away. We just need to keep practicing. And Krishna is working on us. He's like cleaning our heart and removing these things. Yeah. So that's the magic of bhakti. That simply by engaging the senses in the service of the Lord, the senses become purified, mind becomes purified, all these unnatural desires go away because soul, we're spiritual beings. What interest do we have in material things? It's nothing to do with us, Spiritual beings should be desiring spiritual things, which means things related to Krishna, the Supreme Spirit. Okay, Jai. So let's end there. And let's see if we manage to squeeze into class tomorrow. I think it might be possible.
Yeah.
So, Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Go
Jai.
Premanandi, Hadi Hadi Bo. Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada Priya.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhupada Priya.
Hare Krishna. I just want to try to see something here.
Oh, by the way, are you in Dallas or are you?
She's
No, we're
in Austin.
We're in Austin.
Oh, the whole crew is in Austin, right? I heard
Yeah.
Aruna and Pragati.
Yeah. And Janaki's also here.
Oh, Haribol, Janaki.
How long are
I'm-
you
I'm
guys
looking-
all there?
I'm looking at the comments on the YouTube because I was live streaming. So every day I get some interesting comments and questions and things here. So I have people from all over the world here, Bangladesh, and people putting Sanskrit verses here and saying Radhe Radhe and making some nice comments and saying Hare Krishna, ISKCON devotees.
How does it come up? Let's see.
And where am I from? I'm from Texas, USA right now.
Where from Mataji? Oh, that's actually devotees.
And if any of you are listening here now that made some comments before, there were some really nice comments before that were very inspiring. Like somebody at first was saying something like, why is this white lady wearing a sari? Because usually I'm wearing a sari now, I'm traveling, so I'm going a little light. But and then someone said something like, oh, the fact that American people are reading Bhagavad Gita means that the world is healing. I thought that was really sweet. It was nice. Yeah, so keep coming. And yeah, my regular Zoom crew, and then all you YouTubers from around the world. Very appreciate your presence here. So,
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Bye.
Haribol.
Very well. Okay, how do I end this now? Where is it?
Okay, this is your YouTube.
How do I go back?
Buddha.
There we go. Okay,